Hello, welcome back to Python Lists Part 2. So to recap what an actual list is, so a list is a data structure in Python that is an ordered sequence of elements. Each element or value inside a list is called an item. So if I take this example of music tracks on my playlist, I have the following tracks listed there, and with each track given an index value of 0 to 3. So I'm just going to show you here a short program with some lists in it, and we're going to read from the list and we're going to insert into the list. So you've got here at the top of the program 3 lists: shopping list, playlist and football teams. And then you've also got in line 5 where we're going to print the contents of playlist at index position value 2. We've also got the next line 6 which says, okay, print from index value 1 to index value 2. Notice I said index value 2, not 3, because it's like ranges. When you refer to lists, it starts from 0 up to the number in the list, but we refer to it 3 because there are 3 elements, if that makes sense. And we then have scores, which I've added some integer values, 20, 35 and 75, and then the next line will take the value 60 and place it in the index value 1, and then finally I will output again the score. So if we run this program, you will find at the bottom here the U2 as the first output, One Direction and U2 as the next output, and then the following list of integer values with the 60 inserted at index value 1. So this is the second program, which I'm just going to run through now. So I'm creating a playlist, as you can see at the top there, with the following song tracks in it: Rule the World, Night Changes, With or Without You and Wonderwall. And then I'm going to prompt the user for an input. So this line here says, please prompt the user with the input, please enter a track number. That will be converted into an integer. That's what the integer command does. And then that's going to be stored in the variable name number. I'm then going to print from the playlist at position number, the number I've just entered, -1. Now I said -1 because any user will assume that the first item starts at 1. So I'm just, because in lists it starts at 0, I'm minusing 1 from it. So that's a simple program. The next part I'm going to add to the playlist. So I again prompt the user for a new song name, which will then be put into the variable new track. This is a string, not an integer this time, just a string. And then I'm going to append to the playlist using the append method whatever I've just entered in here. Then I'm just going to do a bit to the program here which basically checks that a track that I may have just entered exists within the list. So I'm going to say track equals input, and then I'm going to say if the track is in the playlist, so the list that I've created at the top, and if it is, and it says, I'm going to print found your song at track playlist.index track +1. Now remember, the index command searches for your item in the list, and if it finds it, returns the index value. And then I'm going to add 1 because remember the index value starts at 0. If it doesn't find it, then I'm going to print out not found. So I'm just going to run this program just to check that it all works. So here we go. Please enter track number. So I'm going to enter track number 2. That gives me Night Changes, which if you look at the list, that is correct. So again, let's add another song, With or Without You. Okay, example track. Press return. Now that is now been inserted to the list. Now I'll check that an item exists in that list. So say Night Changes, and it says yes, I have found your song at track number 2. So let's just give you a little simple program how we can use lists a little bit more. So in this third program, I'm going to show you how to iterate through a list, that is, to loop through the list. So I've got here on the top of my program a standard list, which I'm going to call shopping list with some items in it. And then I'm going to print the contents of that list. So I've defined the list at the top. I've then just printed out the title, your shopping list. And then here I'm creating a for loop. Now notice in this for loop, I'm going for item in shopping list. Now what this will do is it will loop through the list, no matter what size that list is. And for each element that it finds, starting from 0, it will put into the variable item. So then on the next line, I will print the contents of that variable and it will loop back around again until it gets it to the end of the list. Now, an alternative way of doing it is using the for variable in range approach. Now, the difference with this approach is not only will it iterate through the list, but it also keep a count of where in the list I am. So for example, I've done a count in range to the length. That is there is a function called len, which will return the length of a list. Now remember with range that any value that we put in there, it'll always start from 0 and go up to not including the value. So if the length of the shopping list is 5, it will go from 0 to 4, although there are 5 elements in it. Hence, when we use the len function, it will return the length of the list. It will then take each element, and I'll be using it in the next statement. Now remember, we've got the count here, which will count from 0 to whatever elements in the list. So I print item count plus 1, because count is starting from 0 and I want it to start from 1. And then I say the contents of the shopping list at position or index position count. Okay, so this will iterate and produce a list. So if I run this, you'll see here, okay, at the bottom on the screen, you will see I've produced my list here without any titles, just Chris Apple cereal. And then as I scroll through to the next one, you'll notice not only have I displayed the items in the list, I've also showed you what number they are, not index number, what number they are. So item number 1, item number 2, item number 3, item number 4. So that's a better way if you want to show the actual position in the list. So this is the final program which I'm going to show you how to use lists and sublists. And I've set up a simple program here which stores a list of names and scores in a particular game. So I'll just show you the first line of code which sets up the list. So this list contains 3 sublists. This sublist, that sublist, and that sublist. Now you can imagine lists and sublists is like a grid, and with rows and columns. So the rows are effectively each sublist. So that would be the first row, row 0, row 1, row 2, as you can see in the diagram here. So if we want the first row, so row 0, and the second column, when that would be 0, 1, with column 0 being 0, the second column being column 1. So if I show you this example here, print score 0, that will print me the first item in the list, the first sublist. This will give me the second sublist and the second column in the sublist, and this will give me the last column and the first item in the sublist. So I can use this to say, get the user to enter a name as a string, and then I can search the list to find that name and return the corresponding score. So I've got here name, I've got a Boolean value called found, which is set to false because I'm assuming that we don't find the name straight away. So that's good. The default value is false. And then we're going to use this for loop, which we've used before. So that's going to go and iterate through each scores, each item in the list, and when it returns the first item, that's going to be the sublist. So the score itself will be a list of 2 items, the first item being the name, the second item being the score. So this says if the score, the first item in the score, is equal to the name that I've entered, then I have found the person's name. So I print their name out, the text score, and I will add the second value in the sublist, 1, which will give me the score. And then I set the Boolean flag found to true to say, yes, I have found the name. And it will continue to iterate through the whole list until it's finished. And then it'll either return true or false to say that the list is found. If I've not found an item in the list, then I say name not in list. So we'll just see if this program works. So we run it. So I'm going to enter first a name that doesn't exist in the list. It's iterated through, it can't find it, name not in list. So we run it again, and then we're going to find the last one. So I put Graham, which is the second sublist, and it will return 20. So it has found the right person. So that is just an example of how we use sublists. So the summary of what we've done, so we looked at lists, so inserting into an item, appending an item, and printing items in lists. We also looked at loops, iterating through lists using the example scores in schools. And then finally we looked at sublists and how different lists can exist within other lists, and you can refer to them like a grid reference. Hopefully that's been helpful. Thank you for watching.